Good afternoon, colleagues. We are continuing our discussion as a part of the January Expert Dialogues. Today, we want to talk about demographics. For years, the world has been debating how to tackle planetary overpopulation. A lot of theories circulated. Would we have enough food, enough space? In reality, however, the trend looks very different. Today, we'll be discussing hollowed-out cities, the growing burden of an aging population on economies, infrastructure and healthcare systems, and of course, the declining demand for children's goods and services. Joining us is Professor Wang, renowned for his research in this field, one of the world's leading demographers. Professor Wang, let me start with this. If we look at UN forecasts, population peaks were initially predicted to occur well beyond the 21st century. Then it was said that population would peak at 11 billion, then 10 billion. But we can see that with every new iteration, the projected peak draws closer to the present days, and the maximum global population figure keeps shrinking. Is there something wrong with the forecasts or the forecasters? Or are the trends in our society genuinely shifting that dramatically?
Well, it's really the reality is not being caught up by experts. The United Nations Population Division has the best experts. They have developed all sorts of models, but every 2 years they come out with a new projection, and it's a projection of a faster global population decline. So the peak time for the world population is being advanced again and again. So instead of 22nd century, now it's late 20th century, but it could be even earlier. This morning we heard your presentation that is the most radical, if not the pessimistic, of the arrival of the peak population for the whole world. So the world is changing fast, and is faster than our best experts cannot predict. So that is the world we live in.
If you were to explain to the average person in simple terms, what interesting and significant demographic shifts are coming that will impact their daily life?
I would say we will be looking at a world that's getting smaller, and we're going to see a lot more older people around us. I think the governments around the world, especially in the aging societies, would be very concerned with how to pay the pension and the health care for the aging population.
The fundamental trend driving demographic change is the decline in birth rates. But what has happened to the world? Have people simply fallen out of love with children?
Actually, no. I think survey after survey in different parts of the world, you still find people want to have children. It's just, I think the reality is that the expectations cannot be met, and there are a lot of constraints. And I think that's what we need to understand and need to address.
Given your background, you are well versed in the situation in East Asia. We see fertility rates in Japan dropping below 1.2. China has fallen below 1. In South Korea, the total fertility rate is 0.7. Focusing specifically on these economies.
Well, there are many common factors in these East Asian societies, including the ones we normally talk about, housing, especially. I think housing is remarkably high housing cost in Seoul, in Tokyo, and especially in large cities in China. I don't know about the housing price in Moscow, but the prices in Shanghai and Beijing and Shenzhen, I know it's disproportionately high compared with the income level of those places. And also there are other constraints similar to other places in the world. For instance, child care, work-life balance. But interestingly, I think the East Asian region is known to be a region of Confucius, under Confucius influence, which is big family, strong family. So one way to turn this around is, well, there are two reasons. One is in these societies, the parents are so worried about the success of their children. So they love their children so much, the best way to love their children is not to have them. And so that's a cultural factor. So in addition to the economic, political, social factors, this cultural factor could be very much into that, because we're also looking at Southern Europe. That's also a region with large family norms, which is one of the three lowest fertility regions in the world, plus Eastern Europe. And the other factor is in all these three East Asian societies, non-marital birth is still a taboo. So that's also related to, I think, the parental desire to have children growing up in a married two parents family. So in other places, for instance in the US, especially in Western Europe, you have up to 50% of the birth are born out of wedlock. So people cohabit. And the same thing happens in East Asia. Young people do cohabit, but they don't have children. So unless they get married, they don't have children. And the marriage is being postponed. And in many of these places, people are not getting married at all. So that also makes a difference. Then you won't have children.
You mentioned housing as a factor to start with. If we combine that with the demographic trend we're discussing, population decline, take China, for example, which saw a natural population loss of over 3 million last year. If the population shrinks, does that mean housing becomes more affordable? After all, we won't need as many cities or as much real estate. Does this mean that as soon as housing and cities become more affordable due to population decline, birth rates will begin to rise?
Well, you would hope so. There are many ironies. One of the ironies is with the declining population, the more remote areas, smaller cities are the ones that would lose the economic dynamism. And so young people would leave those places. And then those places, some of them, as you said this morning, Northeast China, you already have ghost towns. And so those cities, housing would become available, but nobody want to go them. What happens is young people want to go to places where they have jobs, where they have good coffee shops, good restaurants, and good friends. So where are those places? Big cities. So you, at the same time, you see places becoming empty, deserted, and you have large cities which are attracting more and more people, and then housing actually becomes more expensive for the young people to go there to live. So that's just one of the ironies, and that's what we've been seeing across the world. Here in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Los Angeles, New York, Beijing, Shanghai, Seoul, Tokyo, Osaka, it's the same thing. So that's the irony. So young people want to go to places to live their life, but then the housing price is not coming down. Aging will not likely to help with that. So it's the reconcentration of the population.
A number of experts highlight the immense importance of socio-cultural factors in the birth rates. What does this mean? For instance, in a family raising a single child, there is no culture of a large family. When that child grows up, they lack the family mindset for having many children. That is one aspect. The second crucial factor is social media. Many know that social media are linked to everything from societal polarization to the pursuit of unattainable ideals. This often discourages direct interaction, reduces physical communication, and thereby creates headwinds for birth rates. How much weight do you put on these socio-cultural factors, and what can be done about them?
Absolutely, you're totally absolutely. We're human beings. We like to be around people who are similar to us. So if my son is 35, he lives in Los Angeles. So when I see him surrounded, he doesn't have a child. He's not married yet. So when I see him surrounded by friends with children, with couples, and so I feel a little assured that he's probably going to go the same way. And so that social influence is very important. And here's the irony of China's one-child policy. And we just, starting to learn about this. So for China, it had for 3.5 decades had a one-child policy, and not everyone, every family was required to have only one child, but a majority of the Chinese families end up with only one child, 150 million of them families. So we thought when the policy was lifted in 2015 that there should be a rebound, and couples, because they were only child, they would want their children to have siblings. And what we've seen the last 10 years is the opposite. Just as you said, Mr. Oreshkin, it's the only children they grow up to feel it's okay. I grew up as only child and it was totally fine. So that actually is one of the unappreciated consequences of China's one-child policy. I think that also contributes to the very low birth rate that we're seeing in China now because of this unintended culture effect created by a policy.
Let's move on to the second aspect of a demographic change. This is not just decline in birth rates, but also population aging. This is a crucial factor. Perhaps a unique feature of the current moment that is rarely discussed is that today's aging generations are actually the healthiest and most educated in history. Usually, aging carries a negative connotation. But is aging truly just a downside? Or are there positive aspects to it?
Absolutely not. I think that is our thinking has not caught up with reality, with changes. I think for too long we were focused on too simplistic term when we come to population, which is the size, only how many people, how large, without looking at who are these people. So yes, indeed, we have low birth rate and we have aging population, which is going to be unprecedented in human history. But we're looking at entirely different population. It's not just in the developed world, but across the world, you're seeing population receiving education at different levels, the most educated ever in world history. So we're looking at population with more potential for innovation, higher productivity, and also healthier. So retirement age in China used to be 50 and 55. I think they borrowed from the Soviet Union, and only recently they started to increase that, but it's still not enough. I think in many aging societies, you see people in their 60s, 70s are still working. Look at the world leaders. They're all over 70 or even approaching to 80. We're not sure whether that's a good thing or not. But aging is a happy outcome of human progress. So we have to look at the population not just as a number only. Look at the population in terms of the composition, the quality of the population.
Indeed, I see this even in my own family. My mother is 78. She is a professor at Civil Engineering University and continues to teach actively. It's wonderful to see and the value she brings to society by continuing to work and train young engineers at that age. So I completely agree with you. This positive effect exists, and we must not only stop underestimating it, but also create conditions to realize this potential. We need to adopt the labor market and other areas to give the older population more opportunities to contribute. From a policy perspective, what can be done to maximize the contribution of this demographic group to the economy and the country's development?
Absolutely. Who would have thought, ask your mom, whether she ever thought in a younger time age that she would still be working when she's close to 80 years old, right? So I think for all societies, aging societies, we have this unprecedented opportunity to make good use of the human resources, and in terms of for old age, a productive contribution to the society and also for themselves. We are also entering in a new technological era, as this Open Dialogue Forum focuses. That is with automation, with artificial intelligence, and with internet, the whole world. So this allows retraining, and also allows a lot of the work that no longer requires hard manual labor. So we're really in the era where not only it's necessary, but it's possible for continued learning through a robot teacher, and individualized. You don't have to go to school. You can just learn with the internet and with new skills. So there are numerous possibilities to have a longer, productive, and healthy life combined with the new technology era. So I just see there are so many opportunities of governments should enable these re-education opportunities, and for people at older ages can continue to work and to contribute and also support themselves.
Let's discuss how these demographic trends will affect the life around us. I would like you to share your vision of how cities will change. I think China is a good example. If we assume China's population drops by more than half and becomes significantly older, what will happen to Chinese cities? We're used to Chinese cities appearing almost overnight. My favorite example is Shenzhen, which 50 years ago was a small village with one street and is now a modern metropolis. So what happens next? How will they evolve?
My hunch is they are only going to get bigger, and more people are going to be living in these cities or cities around them, so the metropolitan areas. Here's why. For young people, a job is no longer the only criteria for them to live a fulfilling life, even though now they can be connected from anywhere in the world for an exciting lifestyle, for concert, for sport games, for good restaurants, and also for jobs. We're getting more and more jobs in the service sector. You have to be there to work in the service sector. So these large cities are going to be attractive continuously to young people. So if I were to make a projection, I think not only we have 50-70% of people living in cities, like in the case in China now, but we're going to have of all the urban population probably half, not just 30%, 20%, 50% or more of them would be concentrated in these metropolitan areas. That's just one scenario that I can think of.
Yes, but if we look at overall figures, China's urban population is currently about 900 million. Yet we are saying the total population of China could fall even below that figure. While urbanization will continue, this implies there are already too many cities for the population we will see in 50 to 100 years. Will some cities just become ghost towns, or will this process affect all types of cities equally?
My sense is that the smaller cities will disappear, just like villages in China. Most of them have disappeared, towns have disappeared, and there will be some interesting new cities that will survive, but survive on a niche. For instance, in places in China, you can go for vacation, for tourism, for making ceramics, and so you can still have those places, but the majority of urban population would want to live in big urban centers for the obvious attractions they have, but the cost would be high, so which is actually not good for for childbearing, for having children. I was in Tokyo for 2 months last year, and it gives you really a appreciation of how dense a city can go. I didn't realize 300 years ago, Edo, the current Tokyo, was already the largest metropolis in the world, 1 million people. And you go to Tokyo, it's so dense, and you go underground. There are many layers of subway station, but they manage it really well. The connection, the rebuild, to accommodate this huge population. Tokyo is not large, but the population is very dense, and it's very lively. You can still have shops filled with people, unlike in many other places, including China. The big malls are empty, right? So it's a really different life. I think Tokyo would be example for I think many are large big cities, and then in accommodating this large number of people.
Does this mean for Japan that, relatively speaking, in 50 to 70 years, we will be left with only the Tokyo, Yokohama, Osaka agglomeration, while the rest of the country empties out?
Not totally, because Japan also has other cities that are attractive, livable, and I think they have also employment opportunities. Right now, the 2 metropolitan areas, Tokyo, Yokohama, and also Osaka, it's 30%. I won't be surprised. It would go up to 40% or 50%, and but other cities would still be around. It's just going to be a lot emptier.
The key conclusion I draw from your words is that the coming century will be one of fierce competition between cities, both within countries and internationally. Cities with a clear strategy and a clear purpose will attract human capital, while those that fail to find their specific role will be doomed to decline and emptiness. Would you say that's accurate?
I think to a large extent, I'm not sure it's a competition. It's just a redistribution. And because the smaller, weaker cities, they have no power to compete with these large metropolises. They're just, they also have very long history. Look at Moscow, St. Petersburg, and so others. Shenzhen is exception, but look at Shanghai, right? And so these are the cities that also have a long history, and not obviously they will continue to be at the top. I think for planners and for governments, organizations, to understand what people want and to prepare for the cities, because you cannot set up limit like what China still has with the hukou, household registration, not allowing people to move into the big cities, but learn from Tokyo how to or New York. I'm not so sure about New York, but Tokyo, and how to make the city just more and more livable, and at the same time continue to work with the transportation system to extend to the suburbs of these big cities. Not sure how successful that would be, but that could be helpful as well. So I think we need to be prepared for that kind of scenario. But that's basically that's how the world, the population has been moving. We're seeing that, and it's not just East Asia, here in Russia, and then in the West. Look at the Mexico City. Look at cities in Latin America. And these are big places attract people because they have the opportunities there.
Let's move on to the next problem area, pensions system. The ratio of the working age population to the elderly is changing radically. In China, for instance, the pyramid is essentially flipping over. How can we sustain pensions, and how can we survive in such situation?
during the last global financial crisis in the late 2000s, I forgot how many governments collapsed in so-called democracies in Western Europe. And many of them collapsed because they couldn't pay pension. So that's not too long ago. And to have the resources to pay pension and also healthcare, I think it's going to be a big political challenge to any government. And yes, we have the possibility, as we just talked about, of people extending their working life, and so continue to pay into the system, and or to draw less from the pension system. But that's only part of the whole calculation. We are talking about AIs, we're talking about technologies. The question is whether those machines will pay taxes, right? They could generate revenue, but if the revenue only goes into these stockholders, go only into the corporations, they're not going into the state coffers. So even with the technological innovation progress, we're still not going to be better because machines don't pay taxes, right? And so that is going to be a major issue, and I think we can't count on too much on the increased revenue because of the increased productivity. We have to be cautious with that. What countries have to do is to try not to rely on the pay-as-you-go system, to build in multi-pillar pension systems or old age support systems, and to have more feet on the ground, and to prepare for this inevitable, this large share of older population who would need to have some sort of pension and income to support in their old life.
You mentioned tax system changes. That's crucial. We're accustomed to a world where income taxes and social contributions form the bedrock of local budgets and the pension system. But if work is performed by an industrial robot or artificial intelligence instead of human, the question becomes how to tax that effectively. Regarding the current boom, the frenzy in AI company valuations, I think many investors are underestimating future taxation of AI and automated jobs. This will lower their economic efficiency, meaning these companies may actually be significantly overvalued despite their contribution. And aside from taxes, they are their financial markets. How will they fare when the number of assets holders grows and everyone wants to cash out simultaneously to support their consumption? Do you agree that this could seriously impact asset prices?
There's so much uncertainty with the financial market and with all this future. I think you are in the government, in the president's office. This is really a hard challenge for people like you and others in the government, because it's easier to collect Social Security tax from individuals than to collect taxes from large corporations. And they have more political power. So changing the taxation policy, I think, is going to be one of the challenges, because, again, machines don't pay taxes. I can tell you myself, as a confession, I've pension in the U.S. In the U.S. stock market last year was almost 15% increase. It's more than my annual income. So, but what about the people who do not have pension? So I'm a marginal beneficiary from this technological boom, right? But the income should not only go to people like myself who have a foot in the financial market. And besides, the financial market is not for sure. If it crashes, then I lose all of that, right? So I think for government, this is a a very important issue. Here's another thing. A lot of the platform workers, they don't pay. They don't have income. They don't pay. And the people who use cryptocurrencies, they don't pay taxes. They have no income. And so how will government be able to get a fair share for the population? And because the benefit of growth needs to be somehow shared by all the population. I mean, when you have the power centers, when you have all these state investments, it's national resources, is the money from everybody. They cannot only benefit the people who run these companies, right? So that is a political issue. I think that's, along with the technological change, that's also a new issue for a lot of governments.
The next area covers human capital industries, primarily education, healthcare, and long-term care. What will happen here against the backdrop of these demographic changes?
I think we're in a golden era. We have already seen globally the educational improvement, especially for women. So that has already happened. And the challenge for education now is we seem to think a lot of the education can be done by technology, by AI, and which is not wrong, and we certainly can make our teaching more efficient. But ultimately, we need human innovation and creation to continue to work with the technology. So, I mean, I was just watching the other presentation as if we can just all learn in front of an iPad and get answers from ChatGPT. That's not how the world is going to move on. We still need to have, actually, education is more challenging now for people to learn how to be more creative and how to make our learning more innovative. And that's actually not easier, it's harder. The other thing is, now with all this technology, I think learning as a social being is going to be very important. We're still human beings, we're social animals. So we can't just, from very early on, just only interact with some screen. So I think in-person education will not be abandoned. We talked about this 10, 15 years ago with online teaching. We thought professors like myself would be obsolete, useless. It's not the case. And I think we need probably more human interaction, in-person training, teaching. And I don't see that's going to go away. It's probably going to be more important.
And what about healthcare?
I think we are also in a golden era in terms of healthcare. Not just with education, you have all those tools to make learning more efficient and lifelong, more individualized. Healthcare, with technology, we are seeing how diagnosis and remote visiting, and also the assistance of robots and new medicine. And I think with the new technology, human health is going to be more assisted with this new era. And at the same time, all countries waste enormous amount of money in misallocation in healthcare. With AI technology, with the new tools, I think a lot of that can be made much more efficient. So it's not just the healthcare technology part, but also the management part that can benefit, can reduce the healthcare expenditure. And so we're really seeing a golden era of using technology in every aspect, from biomedicine development to health management. and to care, that would really help with health if we can use them properly.
We are discussing how, following the decline in birth rates, the share of young, working-age people globally will decrease. Could competition for youth become the new geopolitics?
I think it's probably already happening. You talked about Africa with a very optimistic take, and I'm fully with you. And we were earlier on concerned about migration, of immigration, of people from those places, and we're already seeing the immigration, the problems caused social conflict. But now what we're seeing is that capital investment are going to places with young labor, with labor supply. So instead of them coming out, we're seeing opportunities go to them. So that's happening. First of all, look at China and Vietnam. So China used to be the manufacturing center. Now it's moved to Vietnam. And look at Africa, and I think that or Latin America. That's what's going to happen. And will there be new? I think, economically speaking, I think the center will be shifting, as you said this morning, and we're going to look at the global south with a totally different lens. But whether that's going to have more geopolitical implication, like the rise of China, we still need to see how far that would go, because we already have so many big powers already.
You actually mentioned your son today, who is 35. What is the best advice you could give him for living in a world with a shrinking and aging population?
I only have one son, not because of the one-child policy. My advice to and wish to him, and he has a girlfriend, is to have a child early and have more than one. Having children is wonderful, and they will give you a lot of headache when they are in their teenage years, but they'll give you a lot of joy and also support in your old age. So after all, we're human beings, and I think to be able to have children and grandchildren and to have family, and that's the source not only for joy but also for health, for mental health, for longevity. So that's I sound like an old Chinese peasant, but that would be my wish.
That is very true, and I fully agree. Returning to the national level, as we slowly move toward a conclusion, which country do you think is currently pursuing the most sensible policy in terms of responding to these demographic trends?
The countries that tried the hardest are not the countries that are successful. One country it was not totally successful, but it's the one that has a long history, and it's Japan. Japan has been undergoing population decline, serious aging, but the standard of living has not decreased, and it has serious aging problems. But Japan is a living example. And looking around, one country that I don't quite fully understand, I need to learn more, is France. France is the exception in Western Europe, and I think in the whole world, that somehow has managed a reasonable fertility for a long time. So there's a lot to be learned, I think, from France. But it's a country that I don't study, and I need to learn more.
With France, the situation is fairly straightforward. It is driven by the large number of migrants who have settled there. If you look at the birth rates across different ethnic groups, the differences are stark. On the one hand, yes, fertility rates remain higher, but on the other, this leads to profound shifts in the social structure and creates other challenges. Is migration the answer to fertility issues?
I would say no. France is lucky, the United States is lucky, and we just learned a few days ago the U.S. had the lowest population growth last year because of the immigration policy. They just so United States is uniquely fortunate to have immigrants from all over the world. But we know in general immigration is not the solution. For a large country like Russia, for a large country like China, you cannot rely on immigration, and immigration comes with a lot of challenges. As I think scholars used to say, we want to have labor, but then what we got are people, right? So they come with their religion, their preferences. There are possibilities. It's hard for integration, for assimilation, for cooperation, but that's a big challenge. So, and with the world with such communication, transportation means, we really can have alternatives for opportunities to be around in the world without having to moving people around. So that is a possibility. I always use the case of India. India has about 5 million call center workers. They all work for people in the United States or in other parts of the world, but they don't have to leave India. They could still be there. So there are a lot of, especially with the high tech, there are a lot of jobs now you can do without having that person moved to a specific location. So immigration is a tricky issue, and I would not endorse the view that just use that as a way to solve this problem, with the exception of the United Arab countries. They've been able to do that, but they're very small countries.
Finally, to conclude our very interesting conversation, I would like to ask you to formulate one key takeaway, one idea that you would want heads of government, business leaders, and ordinary people to hear. How should they act in the face of these demographic changes?
Come to the 21st century, abandon the mindset of chasing population size. We're no longer in the 20th century. The population size is the concern. Think about not trying everything just to increase the size, but think about what's feasible and think about how the world has changed. We have a longer living, healthier, much more educated population, and think of what can be done to make this population live better, and then if possible allow them to have more children if they want to, instead of just chasing only the size of the population and fix everything on that. It's not going to work.
Indeed, the main conclusion is that peak population and aging are certainly not the end of the story. They represent a change in the rules of the game. We need to learn how to play this new game. Governments and companies must make the right decisions, and people must be aware of these trends. Thank you very much for a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Professor Wang.
You're both welcome, and I'm glad we had this great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.